Hello, superheroes of the project management world. Welcome to Project Insight's Professional Development Series. Today, we're going to master resource planning in the age of remote work. Whether you're tuning in from the highest skyscraper or that home base, get ready to power up your project management skills. A few housekeeping items. All participants will be on mute. If you have any questions, please use the chat. This PM training is valid for one PDU. You must stay until the end of the session in order to scan the code. You will receive your PDU certificate before the end of the week, and this webinar link will be here for the recording. Before we start, let me introduce you to our experts. First up, we've got the Superman of PM strategy, Steve West. Steve has helped thousands of organizations make their work easier as the founder and CEO of Project Insight. Project Insight is an award-winning online project management tool. Our mission is to automate your work, unify your data, and make your life easier. If you're not currently using our platform, please reach out. We absolutely love to work with you. Along with Steve, we have the Wonder Woman of milestones, Diane Buckley-Alwies. Diane is a seasoned PMP, an author. She directs core performance concepts. We are always so fortunate to be learning from you both. How's everyone today?
We're doing good.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Matt. And hey, Steve, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks.
All right, let's roll. So, welcome everybody. And today we're going to talk about resource planning in a virtual world. So, to ask the audience up front, have things changed over the last 5 to 10 years, from being so non-virtual to virtual, right? We've all dealt with that. Steve, I even think, Project Insight is pretty much virtual now, right?
Yeah, well, not entirely, but mostly virtual these days. Yes, definitely, especially after COVID. We had like a hybrid before COVID, and then, during COVID, many of our staff decided they were going to move to places like Oregon and out of Orange County.
Yeah. So, I mean, the reality is the project manager's job has changed significantly in the last few years because of that. And so we felt it was going to be important to kind of talk about resource planning here today. We're going to talk about, building your team. We're going to talk a bit about how to understand your team better, especially in a remote environment. Talk about some different strategies to use when you are working more remote and how you kind of keep them engaged. I mean, employee and team engagement is really important to the success of projects out there in the marketplace today. And then we're going to finish up with, checking out some modern tools, obviously with Project Insight, on how you can better manage your resources for your projects, and talk a bit about, what happens if, you can't always think that everything's going to run perfectly. So we are going to talk a bit about, what happens if there is conflict that has to be taken care of, and how, as a project manager, you'll deal with that as it relates to resource planning. All right. So the first thing, you need resources, right? You've been assigned a project. We need some resources. Maybe they've been assigned to you. Maybe it's you have an existing team that you're using over and over again. But the reality is you need the right people. You need people that with a great attitude, have the right skills. And even we'll talk a bit about, even in an agile world, I mean, you've got a population of people that are working on your project. Do you have all the right skills? And what do you do if? And then how are people going to be reporting to each other? How, and what are the methods we're going to use to manage all those resources? So the primary benefit we're trying to do is making sure you have the right resources to be the most successful on the project that you're doing. So, that's pretty important, huh, guys?
Definitely. And I think, in today's, with this, the post-COVID Zoom world, I think more and more your resources are matrixed on many different projects at once. So it makes it really, really difficult to find the right team. And, I'm getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but making sure that they actually have the right amount of time to work on your project and all of that. It's not that simple.
And again, as Matt said, if you've got questions and stuff, please use the chat. If you have pain points that you'd like us to talk about, please use the chat.
Yeah, well, maybe share in there, share some of the challenges you guys have had out there with managing your resources in today's day and age.
But the best approach is you starting with the right people, right? And you got the right resources, you got the right people, but they're all over the place, right? So how are we going to organize them? And there's existing tools. I mean, this is a very simple little resource matrix, but it's still functional. From a project management standpoint, you need to know who you have on your team, what is their role and responsibility, are they, what's that hierarchy and how things are organized. So maybe Mary is the one, you have to she's the lead, and so she has to review every business requirements document or every requirement that's getting put into the system. So having some sort of assignment matrix is really important, even if it's in a simple spreadsheet. We want to know who's doing what, and so this way you can at least take a look and see, okay, do I have all the resources with the right skills, and do I have enough resources with the right skills? Maybe there's a gap. So some of the going through this exercise might identify a gap that you might have. And it's always better to know early on whether or not you're missing something. That gives you some runway to be able to resolve that problem.
Definitely. I mean, and a lot of times, we all want to get right into the software and start putting in the WBS and doing all this stuff and just let's just get to it. But it does make sense to step back, go and use your whiteboard or whatever you want to do to say what are the roles I need to fulfill this, what are the big things we're going to be doing, and this matrix can really help that, give you an idea of the types of people you're going to need. But I think there's a skip that people skip.
Yeah, well, yeah, you kind of jump right in. It's always nice and easy and fun to kind of get started. Now you can give people some things to do, but as a project manager, your job is planning, your job is communicating, right? So from the very beginning, we have our charter, we know what our goals are. We should have some sense of, the critical resources that we need. And, maybe there's an individual person that's not on this list that when you sit and you analyze the project that you're about ready to start and kick off, maybe there's a resource that's missing. Or maybe you don't have enough of a particular resource. Maybe it's a really heavy, design effort that's going to require maybe a couple people doing those business requirements and functional requirements. Once you have the people, hopefully that doesn't change, but we know that will change, right? They might be people that you've worked with before, but has the entire team worked together before. So one of the other things as a project manager, this doesn't go away. I mean, understanding your team and understanding the whole development cycle of a team is critical, important, and identifying where you are. So you may have done this type of project 10 times, but if you have a brand new team, they don't know each other. They've not been on this project before. And the worst case scenario, right? Now you're really starting with that forming end of it, and people are all excited about getting started. And then you have to get introduced. Everybody's got to get introduced, and there's going to be some storming because not everybody's going to communicate in the same way that you want them to communicate or that they have the capacity to communicate in. And there's going to be a cycle of storming that's going to happen. Even in the best team that I've seen, there's always something that pops up, that there's differences of opinion, there's differences. You've got to kind of work through those. So always expect that your team will go through this cycle of development to get to performing. And the faster we get to performing, the more efficient your team will work long term.
Right, and just one new person can really affect how a team, works. And many people, it's the new player is the client sometimes too. Because even if you have a new stakeholder, different executive, they might not understand you, or you might need to educate them to your corporate processes, or the client might have demands that you're not expecting. So yeah, every project that I've been on, almost all of them are different. One way or another, the team dynamic can change.
And thinking about too, like what does happen when maybe a critical resource, or like you said, Steve, our point person at the client changes.
Right.
They're part of the team. Now you've got a little bit of the forming and storming and norming to happen
Yeah, or
again.
someone's on vacation or something like that, right? So someone
Mhm.
critical is on vacation, it really makes a difference. Just one little change. Go ahead, Matt.
Absolutely.
One of
Absolutely.
the things that I think is really important there is to note that that process is going to happen whether you embrace it or not, right? It's just going to take longer if you don't. You will
Right.
get to performing, but that storming and norming is going to be much longer on that timeline. So.
Yeah, and if you as the project manager ignore this, you will have problems. You will have problems. I mean, there's so many times that I've seen projects either fail or almost fail is because something changed midstream
Right.
and didn't do the appropriate steps to get that new set of people or person up to speed, because then they went off on a tangent or didn't necessarily understand the goals. So that's why the whole charter is super important. That's why understanding everybody's roles and responsibilities is important, and you keep coming back to it. There's going to be people coming in and out of your project, so you need to manage that. And in a remote world, how much harder is that, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more difficult when you're not just meeting in person and then all your meetings are virtual. It can be a big challenge.
Yep, I agree. So what we're trying to do is get to performing as quickly as possible. So you as the project manager need to understand those dynamics, need to understand those individuals. You might sit here and say, I'm just not a people person. I like to get things done. It's like, you're going to have to be people, right? I need to understand what motivates Steve and Matt and make sure that, we're on the same page, which then I can help, them integrate with the rest of the team in a better way. So whatever you need to do to get to that point, and it starts with really getting to know your team, taking 10 minutes a week and just kind of, talking about, what's important to Matt, what's going on in Matt's life right now, making sure that they feel comfortable to share what's going on, because silence in a remote environment is the death spiral, right? So if you're not hearing from your team, if you're not reaching out to your team, don't assume that everything is in great shape.
Right.
Because really that ends up being non-communication, not even miscommunication. You're going to have non-communication. People might get distracted on something that they shouldn't be on, or maybe they should be on. Maybe they got pulled off on something really critical. You don't know. But if you're not staying in touch with everybody during the course of your project, that silence will cause rework. It will cause non-value added activity. So more than we ever had to before, we have to spend the time and talk to individuals on a project. And that takes more time. I used to be able to, call a meeting once a week and walk around and talk to 3 or 4 people at a time. But now you have to talk to each person on a regular basis. And that, that just draws things out.
Definitely. And then the whole, just that if your meetings are all virtual, then you have that extra layer on top of all of that too, which we've had a webinar on the remote meetings and all that other stuff. So definitely trying to establish the rapport right away is a good call.
Yep, right away and ongoing. And it's continuous. So like I said, the role of the project manager has changed quite drastically in the last several years because of all this remote work, which highlights the need for you to really take the time and understand your individual team members. So when you want to understand team members, we go back to the basics, right? So Maslow. So like I said, what's going on in Steve's life? What's going on in Matt's life? Not that we have to get into people's personal concerns, but you got to be aware of it. If somebody on the team has some life situation going on. Let's just say their mother's significantly ill, or their child is going through something, or that, if you don't know that, you are going to make assumptions on how they're going to perform. It's not that you have to get into too much detail, but you want to understand whether or not they're in a good place. And you can do that by just having those one-on-one conversations and not get personal per se. But if I'm talking to somebody like Steve or Matt, it's like you can kind of tell whether they're in a good mood today or they seem distracted, but I got to pay attention, right? So if somebody is not in a good mental state, they're not going to be in the best performing mode for you. And
Right.
as you go through this process, you got to get them to the self-actualization before they can actually be self-directing. And in remote work, you need people to be self-directing. Like, I'm sitting here at home, but I could be distracted by 400 other things. Right? I have a nice home now. Look at my.
Yeah, you could be playing the piano right this
I
moment.
play the piano.
Yeah, in the middle of this. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. If some of your people are having struggles, it's for you to know, to be aware of that, it is going to help you with your your planning. So if somebody's like it's the same thing as if someone's going on vacation, or maybe someone's going to be on maternity leave during your project, or maybe they're struggling with a family personal issue of some kind. Knowing that can help you understand, I might need more resources in this area because my engineers are busy, doing what they are.
Right. Or maybe
busy.
You shift the resources, from, Mary to John,
Right.
for a week to give her, some relief.
Yeah. Or you change the schedule. You say it's going to take a little longer because of these factors, and knowing that ahead of time is better than finding out at the end.
And ultimately, yep, I absolutely agree. And ultimately, you want people that are being self-directed in a remote workforce. Some of the other things that you got to be aware of is, have we given them the appropriate training?
Mm-hmm.
I think we do expect, with the world of all the videos and YouTubes and stuff like that, some people are really good at it. Some people aren't. Some people are, effective at it. We make sure people are getting the right training, because that goes to your efficiencies, right? So do they have the right training? Do they have the right background? Are there things that you can do to help them, get there faster? Because an old school way is, hey, Diane, go sit next to Joe and work with Joe on this and watch what he's doing. That was a lot easier. It's not that easy now, especially with everybody remote.
Yeah.
Compensation is always going to be a motivating factor, right? Are we compensating people well enough? I mean, these are things that you have to think about. You might have contractors on too. Are they working on other projects? There could also be some contention when you have contractors and employees and things like that. So you got to be careful of that. Micromanaging, who most people don't like micromanaging, but there are people that some do, and they need specific tasks. So maybe they just work best in that kind of environment. But if you've got people that don't require micromanaging, you might be negatively impacting the performance of your team if you overly micromanage. So that's a balancing act, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think, go ahead. And I think just getting back on just managing your resources and understanding them, you may not be able to assess somebody's skill if it's not your subject matter competence, if it's not your area of expertise. And so that's another thing, is how do you, if someone isn't that good at what they do, or not as efficient as maybe other resources you've worked on, that's something that is something you might need to rely on other people to help you assess resources.
And we all have the one or two people in the organization that everybody wants, because right. But then, again, delegation is important. So that person that's really good at something, how do we get their knowledge into other people's heads? And that, again, career, it's like I said, I keep coming back to this. This whole virtual world has really changed how project managers are managing the resources they have. And you have to get a lot more in depth with each of those individuals and understand what's their motivation.
Yeah.
And if their basic needs are not being fulfilled, that's first and foremost. But then you think about all the other things that could be motivating individuals, and we're all different. What motivates me isn't what motivates Steve or Matt. So everybody's different, and it takes a lot of time to do that. So your job really is to make sure you understand their strengths, understand their weaknesses, understand their preferences, to make the best use of the resources that you have. And then how are you going to leverage them for the best results? Any comments or questions out there?
No, not at this point. I think that it's just so much, everybody, it's almost a misnomer that you're remote and you're more productive, because now you are having to have all this additional bandwidth of that personal touch, wherein if we're the three of us are in the same room, it's pretty easy to understand where everybody's feeling, right there.
I mean, even when we put these webinars together, we can't just do it in a vacuum, right? We try to do some stuff remotely. We get together, we kind of talk through it together, make sure we understand what we're trying to accomplish on these webinars. And, over the years, we've gotten way more effective at it, right? And efficient at it. And so, we don't have to spend as much time, working together, but we still do. And, I need to understand Steve's perspective on the topic and Matt's perspective on the topic, and they want to understand mine. And we don't do that at the last minute, right? So, you have to plan for that. So even putting these webinars together is kind of an example of working remotely, right?
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, with the comments, it looks like in order to join the chat, you have to log in through YouTube. So not everybody has a YouTube account, but it does look like that's what our setup is today.
Okay.
So that's maybe what's going on there.
I guess the three of us are going to have to talk more then.
Yeah.
I'll get, but please send your comments afterwards if we didn't get to them, and we'll be happy to respond.
Yeah, or maybe I'm not sure what the exact process is, but I saw that it does look like it's a YouTube connected chat channel.
Gotcha. Technology, right?
I know, right? They keep changing the software.
I know. So a lot of the, we're going to talk about it here, right? When we don't have as much face-to-face time, our needs for communication are that much greater. The complexity of managing conflict is that much greater. The complexity of understanding the reward system, is that much more complicated. The interpersonal skills due to the distance, it's like, it takes a lot longer to get to know people. I always think about you get on those Zooms with like 60 people on them.
Right.
They're like during COVID, it was like I'd have these, 60 people on them. And then I finally met them live and I didn't recognize them. So I've been talking to them for over a year, finally met them live and didn't recognize them because you're just, staring at a couple pictures and it's not the same. So really getting to know people, in a virtual, it just takes longer. And this us versus them mentality, it is accentuated when people are left alone. So this goes back to the whole conversation of making sure you reach out and you build those rapport and that relationship with each of your team members, because you want people that feel connected with the team and that it's not an us versus them situation. So again, just takes a lot longer to do.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's spend some time and talk about some of the tools that are available. I can't imagine doing a project today without some technology tools. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, absolutely. Had Microsoft Project, put my project schedule together, but I use that as my guide for our meetings, etc. But now with all the remote work, it's more important to have some sort of technology tools that allow you to keep everybody informed and not, to minimize any delays in communication. So Steve, you want to kind of share with us a little bit about this one?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is just like the basic resource sheet on a project where when you start your project, we talked earlier about the resources, figuring out who your resources are. Like this is a particular screen in Project Insight under resources that you can use to just build your team and see how many tasks has this person involved in my project. And, this is like a role in our tool where you have a placeholder. You put a design team resource has 3 tasks. We're going to swap that developer out with a real developer. So, building a resource sheet online makes a lot of sense. And also, this list can be a contact list where you can get the contact information for these individuals. So especially if you're about a big team and maybe not everybody works together, they can all go to the resource list. It's a real basic part of the tool. Most software tools out there have resource sheet in there to do that stuff. But yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, one of the other things that I think is really powerful on our resource sheet here, though, kind of, unlike the static one, is this can also control who's being notified as to when, right? As actions are happening in the project, we can then be letting the project manager know, the primary project manager, the sub, any of these kind of parties that you see here, notified of events that are taking place. So it's also a control panel.
And knowing what's on everybody's plate is like, that task count is kind of important too, because, I have my little routine from myself in the morning and I go through my emails, etc. This is just one of those disciplines that in a remote area, you got to, get up and see, hey, has anything on my task list changed? Right? Has anything on my resource plan changed? You could have somebody, if it's tied, if things are tied into the vacation schedules and stuff like that, understanding that through a tool like this would be phenomenal, because you, as a project manager, you come in, take a look at it every day. You can see where you stand and then respond to it if something popped up that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, earlier you showed us a resource sheet that's just manually constructed. What's awesome about the online tools is this is dynamically constructed, meaning if you put somebody else in a task, then they'll appear here automatically. If you add more tasks for the person, the count changes automatically. So, you don't have to manually create these things anymore. And that you talk about 30 years ago or 20 years ago, that's what most people did. And you would be surprised though, today, a lot of people do projects over email or now Microsoft Teams or Slack or Discord, one of those platforms, that so much of it never gets put into anything. Or if you put it in a spreadsheet, you may as well just write it down on a piece of paper, because one sheet's not usually connected to another and another and another. So,
well, and a simple example would be where it's like, oh my God, let's say I was able to negotiate another resource coming on, get them into this list. Now you got your team that's doing the work on assigning tasks out, see all the available resources with particular skills immediately. It's not like I have to go send an email to somebody and say, hey, add so-and-so to your list of developers, that you have access to use. It's immediately available. And when you're setting up your tasks to do, that you have those resources and what their basic skills are. Still doesn't, tell me yet, like, the quality of Adam here, a developer. Maybe he's the best one there is, but maybe he's not, so those are the things that the project manager and any of the leads have to kind of consider is, what resources am I using? But at least you have the list of them and you have their role.
Definitely.
The next part is really once you go do the assignments and you are doing your estimating and you're getting a capacity. So there's a lot of things we can talk about on this slide here. First and foremost is understanding the effort of work, right? And who's going to do it, and what's the expectation of when they can complete those tasks. And that's where you've got the waterfall versus agile kind of discussion about who's getting those assignments and what's the expectation.
Yeah, and you just mentioned another thing right there about effort, and we're looking at a screen there too that's in Project Insight that we'll share in a minute. But if we get a lot of clients come in and they have the tasks, they know what the steps are, but they don't actually consider what the effort is to do the task. Like how many hours, if you were to sit down and do something, does it take? And then maybe not even consider the duration of how long it'll take to do a certain step either. And you'd just be surprised how many, and even dev teams, software devs, there's this abstraction, there's this agile abstraction to story points and all that. But, story points are effort. At the end of the day, that it takes you time to do something. That's the effort. Whether you score it by story points, which is kind of an abstraction from what really it is how many hours or days it takes to do something. And then there's how many days do you give someone to do that effort in, because so many people are matrix now. Like back 30 years ago, you might have a developer and they'd be on one project. And so you have all 8 of their hours all day long and 40 hours of their week to give them tasks. And then you're doing your schedule and you can say, well, my developer can do this, then this, then this, then this. But the reality of today is that people are working on many projects at once. And you can't really just assume that you're going to have a full attention of somebody for a whole week. So it's now even more important to separate out the effort from the timing of when you're going to do that effort. Your
And
schedule.
having a tool like this,
Mhm.
especially in the case where you've got people working on multiple projects, you can see all the projects that they're working on and the
Right.
total of the time that's being allocated. So I
Right.
said that earlier, where maybe they are working on even a more important project than yours, and you're working with another project manager to manage the capacity of a really key resource. Having these kinds of tools are invaluable for ensuring, you can stay on track and not get surprised.
Yeah.
If you've got somebody that's over capacity, and there's a couple of reasons why they're over capacity. A, your estimate was terrible, right?
Right.
And people, or you just, you think, you haven't even looked to see how much stuff you've given them, so estimating effort based on the skills of those resources and their history, I want to say, is really important. That's where we get into the whole risk management. It's like,
Mhm.
Are they real efficient users? Maybe they're not. And if they're not, go back to the conversation. It's like, maybe we should be giving them more training, maybe block in a couple hours for them to dedicate some time to go through some, training videos that will help them do their job better. So,
Mhm.
understanding both the assigned effort and duration and all the projects that they're working on at the same time, as well as analyzing the data to see, how people are performing on individual tasks against the effort that was planned, is another key role of the project manager, because you don't want to just keep assuming a person's going to be performing at a certain level.
Yeah.
So really, you have to put your analytical hat on and, do your retrospectives, and the retrospectives can't just be, yeah, we delivered to what we expected, or no, we didn't, and we'll work harder next time.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and then, we talked about just putting in your effort and your time. If uh, every project, if your people are matrixed across many projects and you put them into a system like Project Insight, you'll get that view. And I have it right here on my screen here. If you can put it up there. There you go.
There you go.
This is a list of everybody's capacity and how much of it is occupied. So the green means that the green line right here for Adam Lewis is how much he could do, and this is how much he's scheduled for. And you can see this week he's over, and then back to under, and then over again. And Brett Favre, our famous quarterback, way over allocated at the end of the month. Let's find out why. And you can open that up and you see, well, these are all the different projects that Brett's on and where the hours are of each thing. And you can even drill in right down to find the tasks that he's assigned to. Like, okay, he's going to do that. design work. And from this screen, you can drag them to another resource to reschedule if you want. But this is what we're talking about by putting your project plans in, by putting in the effort and duration. This report is automatically generated for you, if assuming you have all of your projects in the system, right, for your organization. You don't have to like go and put this spreadsheet together and end up, somewhere else to show how busy everyone is, which a lot of people still do that even with modern tools. You might be using a tool like Trello or something like that that doesn't do this kind of thing. Then
This is probably one of the
manually
most
do this.
powerful things that you can have as a project manager.
Yeah, exactly.
To your point, Steve, it's not only the red stuff, the items in red. So yeah, maybe Brett's over capacity, but I can see that he has a couple days available.
2 weeks.
So
2
how
weeks
can
under.
so how can I move things around? And
right.
You got to look at your dependencies, et cetera. But maybe there's a way to shift this around to where it levels it off for him. And then I look at the one below, the Emily and the Eric, I'm like, are they just twiddling their thumbs? Like, what are they doing? Right. So maybe I need to get on the phone. That's where you have an opportunity to talk to them saying, I see that you got these things on your plate. How you doing with them? Do you think the estimates are right? Or maybe they're wrong. Let's make sure. And then, okay, well, if the estimates are right, then what would you like to do during the couple hours that you might have? Because, where can we do some improvements, some training, some, cross trainings? I don't know. You have that conversation, or maybe, hey, you know what? You're really under allocated for the next week. You want to take a vacation for a week, because a lot of companies have unlimited PTO too.
Yeah.
Well, why have people sit and twiddle their thumbs? Because sometimes that's not motivating at all.
Yeah.
And
I do want to share two other parts of this. If you just mentioned PTO, there's a way in our tool to have PTO where the person can just mark off that they're going to be out, like, these 3 days. That'll automatically, right now I'm Patrick Insight, but this is what they would see, and they can say, I'm going to be out that day.
Mm-hmm.
This report reflects that.
Yeah.
So, now the thing will automatically lower their capacity. If they just mark off when they're going to be out, then you can tell that they're not available.
Yep. Because oh, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was just going to say, one of the powers with that, Steve, if you filter it and group them by resource type, then it ties back into our roster that we had.
That's right.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then you can then see that of my consultants, I have somebody who's going to be on PTO, and now I need to balance out that sheet there.
Right. This particular report can be rolled up by department or by resource type so that you can get a capacity of your whole, like all your engineers or your developers.
That's very cool.
Yeah, exactly. So,
like I said,
there's way more to it than that, but that's, the high level.
And the hard part, though, and this is what everybody needs to understand, the hard part is the discipline to maintain it. That's the hard part, and then you and your organization need to be reinforcing with people, you got to put this stuff in the system. You've got to, make sure it's accurate. And it's going to take time for people to get that habit. That's why I was saying, like, I would even be calling Emily and saying, hey, you're under allocated. What else can we do to fill that time? And that gives you that opportunity to really understand those individuals and really kind of build that team. So, I mean, I love this chart, and I love the fact that you can roll it up to different departments. I think that's great too. But the discipline is super important, because garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. But that's why with the tools, having the templates and having it not be difficult, like we said before, 20 years ago, each project manager would have this information like trapped in their one file. Mm-hmm. But to get it all online, then it creates, once you get it online, you get so much. This is where the superpowers comes in, that we're able to look at all of the projects at once and not just one at a time. So, and then also there's this project manager, these might be other projects these people have. You may have no responsibility for those projects, but it's good for you to see them at least.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then, ultimately we want to see how we're performing. to our expectations. And again, having, getting your team to be at that performing level, you want to make sure you stay on task, under budget, making sure everything's delivered on time. So having that earned value data automatically produced for you within the system is another great one, because you said it the other day when we were practicing. But basically, the whole thing about story points and effort, at the end of the day, your company and your clients are going to want to know, did I get what I paid for?
Right. I mean, all of that effort is
Yeah.
dollar signs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your
and in
staff,
the time frame that I
it's
asked
either,
for.
yeah, I mean, it's either, well, especially if you're billing. I think, people who do projects for hire pay a lot more attention to the cost side of things than maybe customers of ours that are internal only. But it does make sense to quantify dollar wise your internal resources. It's real easy to do if like you're not doing this already. You can just create a blended rate for everybody. Or if you want to, you can put the individual approximate costs in and get a value for, this chart you're seeing here is actually capex and opex by project, which is something a lot of people want to do. But you can get the plan and earn value, and the plan value is the dollar amount of the effort in each given month, what that amount is, and then earn value is what you fulfilled of the plan value. So those things become automatic for you if you're putting in your hours and your effort, and then you just quantify that with some rates. Then you can get these nice charts that show, and this one's capex versus opex, but this could also very easily be your plan value versus your earn value. But those kinds of things these tools can do. Project Insight.
Yeah, and you brought up the point about wanting to communicate that performance. And I don't know about you, but nobody that I've ever worked a project for ever gave me an unlimited budget and an unlimited deadline. Right?
Yeah.
Not going to happen. Right? So, I mean, it's still required. So having some of these modern tools, and I'm also a big proponent of sharing that knowledge with the whole team, because go back to motivations. Some people are motivated by achieving a goal, right? And if some people are like, oh my God, we're behind, that could be the motivation you need from those individuals to put the pedal to the metal and get it done. Some people aren't, but there could be some that are. And sharing that information, making it available at everybody's fingertips, I think is really important. People don't work with urgency if they don't understand why we're doing something at all.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool. All righty. So kind of in summary, you really want to make sure you have all the right resources, the right place, the right time. You want to make sure you're monitoring your actuals, monitoring against your planned utilization, making sure you have resources. Again, stuff's going to happen in the middle of the project. Resources are going to leave, new resources come on. You got that whole cycle of forming, storming, and norming happening, hopefully to a smaller degree. And you have to take some corrective action. The last thing we want to talk a little bit more about is just conflict. Do you think there's more or less conflict in a virtual world versus a non-virtual world?
Well, there's probably more conflict, but you don't see it. But before we go on too much, we do have a question out in the audience, and it says they're asking if I think that our tool can do what this question is, but I'm not sure who that is. Let's reach out to Matt, and Matt will get with you, and we'll.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Yeah,
but I want to answer the question. So the question is, any way they can see the timeline on the current week, and that could refer to a couple different things. There should be able to see you should be able to limit a view to the current week, but I think that we're referring to the project top-down allocation. There's a screen that if there's a very long project, you don't it doesn't scroll you to the correct week right now, and that's definitely being worked on. So it'll be in a scroll bar, so we
to
have
go
an
to the
engineer on
current
that right
week
now.
on the timeline as opposed
Oh,
to
it's
showing
Linda.
the duration. Yeah, it's Linda. So
Yeah,
instead
so
of it
that's
showing
being
the entirety, it'll go to just showing where we are currently.
yeah, that's definitely being worked on. It's not out there yet, but you're not the only client that's mentioned that on the top down. So
Awesome.
yep. So that's definitely it's high priority.
That sounds great. That sounds great. Yeah. So now like there tends to be, and I don't know if it was you, Steve, or Matt that said it, the conflict, just you may not know about it. Right. So
Right.
what's
That's the problem.
right? Somebody sent an email to somebody else on the team, and that set them off. People's feathers got ruffled. I'm talking to a bunch of project managers here, right? It's like that stuff happens all the time, and their feathers got ruffled, and therefore they went and worked on their other projects, and they just said, "I'm going to take a time out on this other one." So again, it comes. There's always going to be conflicts. Hopefully not significant, but I go back to the conversation is that it's your responsibility as a project manager to check in with your people on a regular basis. Something will happen, if not multiple times. Some priority will occur. Somebody will get pulled off on a support issue. Now, all of a sudden, there's a Sev 1 and the entire engineering group goes off to fix that and throws a big old monkey wrench in the projects, which with the tools, it's not as hard to replan, right? So let's just say you had a day of downtime in the engineers because they all went off to go fix a Sev 1. Well, all right, block off that day, Sev 1. Let me now look at my allocation, my capacity plan, and see how we can reshuffle all these things to still get us close to the plan that we had. Maybe we had some capacity and somebody's doing some training. You're like, oh, you know what? Can you not do that training this week? We'll reschedule it next week. So you've got to constantly be monitoring what's going on, because there will be things that happen.
Yeah, I know. I mean, getting back to what you said too, because we're all virtual. I mean, back in the day, or when you're in the office, you could like sense that, right? You'd sense.
See that body language going on.
Right. And it's funny because we all think, oh, it's funny how society has gone to this. Well, you don't really need to be in person anymore. And everyone, a lot of people do love the remote and all that stuff, but you really do lose. There's stuff it's like not on the surface, but by not being in the office, like you can tell if you're in a meeting with somebody and, body language or whatever, that saves you time, right? So that time that you used to be able to tell intuitively that there's some problems, maybe you don't know, and now you got extra time you got to spend on managing that, like what Diane's saying.
There's two other things too. Like sometimes having everybody together causes some conflict, right? Right. Or distractions, but then sometimes those distractions are really good, because I've been in like just, walking down the hallway, bring up a point. It's like, we're having this issue with A, B, and C. And we sit down for an hour and we pull in 3 other people and we like, you know what? We've solved it. Right. That solution may not have come to fruition if the 5 or 6 people were all working remotely, because a lot of times we don't get into the detail on a teleconference. A lot of times it ends up being a Slack discussion, or, one person to one person, or an email chain of things, which in my opinion, many times that takes things longer than it is just to pull people together. So one thing to really pay attention to as a project manager is watch even that kind of communication traffic. If things seem to be churning, it might be time to kind of let's pull everybody together and let's see if we can solve it.
Well, and then it's really a bummer in a way, because that means if you're remote, that means we're going to do yet another Zoom call, which people don't really, you get into this, like we're Zooming or whatever, you're doing these online calls all the time with whatever platform you're using, then it's hard to get the work done because you just had meeting. So, it's really not that easy to deal with these things. That's why I'm laughing, kind of, because we traded some efficiency. Like now the people don't need to commute and all that other stuff, but you end up spending your time a different way.
Yeah.
Differently.
And miscommunication. Remember, there was that one thing about miscommunication, because writing is not the best communication.
No.
Just
well, I have a tip on that, is that if you're in a Teams, like Microsoft Teams or Slack or something, right? That if you're writing more than two, like I think as a general rule, I like to ask people, like, if you end up finding that you're writing more than 2 sentences in the chat message, that's a call. That's at least a call.
Yeah.
Because you could spend so much time doing all the writing, and then does the person ever really read it? Did they understand what you said? So if you have more than 2 sentences that you're starting to chat somebody, probably it's a call. Not you're out of chat land and into call land, because you could sit there and spend a half an hour chit chat. A 5-minute call is a half hour of bing, 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 bing.
Agreed.
Text messages,
and not getting your work done either. So it's like,
well, yeah, and then you got that problem.
But and the project manager, you need to pay attention to that. So again, that's one of the things that's changed in this remote world, is what are we paying attention to? Before it was like really paying attention to body language. Now it's like traffic. You're paying attention to chat traffic and email traffic and trying to get more one-on-one time. So the project manager's role is changing, and it has been changing, but the tools, the tools help you pay attention to the important things in many ways, so you're not going to get totally surprised if you've got those good tools and you're paying attention to each of your individual team members. You won't be that surprised if something is going wrong. You should be very well aware of what's going on. So again, I think this has been an awesome conversation. I hope, I apologize if somebody can't put their little chat in there because it was on a YouTube, but definitely feel free to reach out, because, we want, this is critical to the execution, the successful execution of projects, and this, planning and managing those resources is how you get to the end. And delay after delay after delay on projects only does 2 things: frustrate your clients and cost more money. And that frustrates your organization. So I appreciate everybody's time. If we have any other questions, more than happy to answer them.
Yeah, I do have one other comment, because you mentioned we were talking about the systems and stuff. So like with project, if you are a Project Insight customer, or even using a different tool, encourage your team to really use the tool and adopt it, because like putting like you might find yourself writing an email or writing a directive in a chat message that might really just be a task that you should log, and you'd put that in, instead of chatting someone, hey, can you do this for me right now? You're interrupting something else, probably. Logging it into your plan, and then having the team and assigning it to the person, and then having them update the status of your time entries, logging your time and commenting on that item. Now you and your whole team have visibility to that for that task. Obviously I'm not saying that everything you do should be a task, but this something that's not like a quick 2-second thing that might take someone half a day, couple hours. You're creating a new task, put it in the tool.
It's a great point. Thank you, Steve.
I don't think we have that many questions, but we do. Oh,
no.
Yeah, we got some. We're about done here. We need to get to the
QR.
PDU.
There we go.
There we go. There's your QR code. We're running out of time. And thanks everybody for joining us today.
Get out your phone, get this scanned. You'll have this sent to you before the week is done. this link will also work as a holder for this video, where you can return to rewatch. We
Awesome.
hope that you do.
Right.
Is
And
the
we,
upcoming-
yep.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, all good. Upcoming webinars we'll be here through the summer, and we're excited to see all be together and see everyone there. So please do join.
Yeah, some new ones coming up too, which we're excited for that.
Yeah.